we have a Kenyan 24-year-old woman who has won season 42 of Survivor. You guys have ruined this. You've spoiled it for me. I am still watching it. Okay. Anyway, now that I know how it's gonna go, this beautiful woman who I am currently watching on Survivor, and I am officially on episode 3, apparently has won Survivor, which is insane. Congratulations to you, and thank you for the spoiler, Madam Producer. I do not appreciate it, Miss Koi.
Hello, welcome to Trash Opinions, where we talk all things trash. I am your host, Trash, and today we are going to be talking about Survivor 42, a season that's a lot more well-received than Season 41. A lot of people look at them the same way as they would South Pacific in relation to Redemption Island, as the new and improved version of that season, where a lot of the flaws are fixed. It has a lot of the same twists, and it keeps reminding us that 41 hasn't aired at the time of this filming, which is something that's never really brought up until now, that Survivor does 2 seasons at once. Shot in the Dark is back, the silly phrases are back, Do or Die is back, that damn hourglass twist is back, everything is back. In POC form. Fans tend to dislike 41 and like 42, but considering I actually liked 41, is that reputation warranted, or is 42 the start of a decline? Find out now on Trash Opinions, but first, we are so close to 100 subscribers. If a few more people subscribe, I will be putting out a season ranking video on my channel once 47 wraps up. Thank you so much to everyone who subscribed. You're amazing, and you make these videos worth making. Now, let's get right on into Survivor 42. Now, the honor of last place on this season, I considered a couple names until finally settling on who I have right now, because it's the obvious pick. Here we have Romeo Escobar. Romeo gets close to Zach as the 2 beefcakes on the tribe, and he gets annoyed with Rocksroy's bossiness. Romeo opens up a bit about being more subdued in his queerness and being in awe that Hai could be so open, which reminds me a bit of the Brett and Zeke friendship in Millennials vs. Gen X. He comes out of this conversation wanting to be a more confident gay man, which I found cute. He then gets super paranoid at the merge and almost becomes the boot because of it, but Mike really wants to get out Chanelle and convinces Jonathan to stick with the plan. His role for literally the entire merge is being either the secondary vote or the decoy vote. It's like they forgot to actually vote out Romeo until the final 4. All you can say about Romeo is, it's fucking Romeo. Romeo started from the bottom and stayed there. Dude might be the luckiest GOAT in Survivor history because he was almost a boot on every single round. I don't think there was a single round where his name wasn't brought up. Fate played his game for him, while Romeo just sat there eating rice from the bottom of the pan. Romeo did nothing the entire merge, and that's not hyperbole. He may be one of the worst runner-ups of all time from a gameplay standpoint, if you ask me, and he wasn't even bad in an entertaining way. He keeps comparing Survivor to a pageant, but I really don't see the connection. He has the most obvious fake idol lie I've ever heard, because if he had an idol this whole time, why the hell has he never used it? He even makes a big deal out of it when he announces he will not be playing his idol, because surprise, it's a fake, and instead it will be thrown in the fire. I love how Hai shakes his head in response. It perfectly mirrors how I feel about Romeo as a character. He somehow wins final immunity, saving Maryanne and sending Mike and Jonathan into fire making. Even though if you ask me, his best move would have been to send Maryanne and Mike into fire making. Even if he had more confidence that Jonathan could knock out Mike than Maryanne, Maryanne is just as much of a threat. He's basically letting her in so she could win. Romeo is just a nothing character. He starts off with some promise, but outside of being gay, there's really nothing to the guy. He has a terrible final tribal council performance where he just shows that he had no idea what he was doing out there. There has never been a more fitting 0 vote finalist. If he can get a negative amount of votes, he probably would have. Romeo is meh. And now getting to the person who was on the bottom until I decided to put Romeo there, we have Marya Sherron. Marya is invisible the entire first episode, until dropping a sad bomb on everyone the next episode by talking about how her brother died of COVID right before the season. She has his face engraved on a necklace she plans to bury in Fiji, but sadly she never gets a chance to do that. She has a gut feeling she's the boot, so she plays her shot in the dark, which fails, and she goes out just as her story was starting. Marya is easily the most forgettable person from this season. It's quite the sad fate, but I'm gonna put her in meh. Next up, we have someone I was actually going back and forth with Mariah of who's more boring, but here we have Jenny Kim. Jenny is kind of invisible her entire run, but she's Mike's number one, and it's a wonder how far she could have gone if she wasn't eliminated in these wonky circumstances. But what can you really say about Jenny? She's decent at puzzles. She's very unlucky with the tribe dynamic in current game state, where two people don't have their votes at tribal, and it comes down to a 1-1 tie, where Daniel basically immediately folds and lets Hai have his way, saving Lydia and sending Jenny home. I wish we could have gotten more out of Jenny. She was just kind of there until she wasn't, and they don't even give her a proper send-off in her boot episode like they did with Mariah. There's no way she's not going into meh. Next up, we have someone I don't even know how to feel about, and here we have Rocksroy Bailey. Rocksroy is kind of the Brad of the tribe, where he is an old school guy in a new school, just not nearly as cool. He's immediately bossy, and it's kind of crazy he's not the first boot. He's honestly kind of a terrible player. He also has a bit of sexist overtone in how he talks about his nagging wife and the fact that he doesn't get along with a single woman on the cast. He's the only one out of the loop on the Swati vote, and it's not looking good for Rocks come to merge. He gets to go to exile like Erica, where the hourglass is waiting, and he's given the choice to change the outcome of a challenge to save himself and screw over Tori, which obviously he does, screwing over Lydia. He then wants to form an all-men's alliance, which they all agree to, but nobody else is actually set on it except for the He-Man woman-hater himself, booting Rocksroy at the first opportunity they have at an all-men tribal at the split tribal. At least his elimination causes a ripple that leads to a really powerful social moment from Drea and Maryanne. Rocksroy just ends up a rather forgettable character despite making it to the merge. He's going in meh. Next up is someone who had potential but just ends up as kind of a dud, and here we have Swati Goel. After leading the vote against Zach, Swati is totally invisible and easy to forget about until Romeo, Tori, and Drea start comparing notes and realize she's playing all sides. She wants to convince everyone she's their number one, but she gets caught in too many lies to trust, and they vote her out after she uses her shot in the dark and fails. At least Rocksroy voted with her. She remarks that she could come back and win an All-Star season, and honey, let's be real here. There's no way you're making it on an all-star cast. Swati, as much potential as she may had, comes off as a nothing character that goes out early, and she lands in meh. At number 13, rounding off the duds, we have Chanelle Howell. Chanelle starts off promising enough. She gets thrown under the bus by Daniel, but somehow escapes that entire situation unscathed, while Daniel is getting all of the backlash for the plan to target Lydia. Once Daniel is gone, she is immediately public enemy number one, and Chanelle becomes wise to it, as they make it pretty obvious. It's actually really funny that every time she comes up to a conversation, they're like, so who wants to go spearfishing? Chanelle is almost saved at the merge by Romeo making himself a target, but Mike just wants Chanelle out so bad, and he gets his way. She ends up kind of a nothing character on the season despite having some potential, but she's still going in meh. Now getting to someone that I really wanted to like, but they didn't give us a chance to like him, and that is Jackson Fox. Survivor having two positive character portrayals representing this trans community is one of my selling points to non-fans when explaining why Survivor is such a good show. Two doesn't sound like much, but considering 99% of shows have exactly zero positive trans representation, two is fucking amazing. It really sucks Jackson couldn't play the game due to being prescribed lithium before the game and not telling production about it until getting on the island, and needing to be pulled because of the dangers of lithium withdrawal under the stressful situations Survivor puts you under. It's just an all-around shitty situation that I wish could have gone better in a different timeline. Jackson genuinely seems like a good guy. I would have really liked to see more of Jackson, and I hope one day he can come back to Survivor. Honestly, if he was a returnee on 50, I would actually think that was awesome. I'd be for it. Anyway, Jackson didn't get a chance. Next up, at number 11, we actually have someone who has all the building blocks to become a character that I love, but they just gave us nothing with her, and that is Lydia Meredith. Lydia starts off incredibly relatable by being like, hey, I have zero of the skill set needed for Survivor, but whatever, I'm here, which I feel like I would be doing out there. I'm pretty sure my first confessional would be like, why the hell am I here? I could be at home laying in bed with my vape pen. It's been 2 hours and I'm already hungry. Can we wait win tacos at the first reward challenge? I really want tacos. Are there tacos at Ponderosa? Maybe I can get myself voted out. They better have Tapatio hot sauce and not that Cholula crap. She's almost booted at the Jenny boot as she's tied 1-1 with her, but Daniel fumbles the ball and Lydia and Hai are able to convince him to flip the vote on the Jenny. Lydia is lucky to have someone as loyal as Hai for that round. Lydia then gets some love your body content where she talks about finally being comfortable in her own skin. It's nice to have women with more realistic body proportions getting to be on Survivor rather than all these hot supermodels with perfectly toned abs. It's why I appreciate the chubby guys. I would feel so insecure with my pasty dumpy ass standing next to all these ripped and tan all-American males. More of my paper white fupa will blind you in the bright sunlight representation on Survivor, please. We need it. Lydia's team wins the immunity challenge right before the merge, but the stupid ass hourglass twist sends her to tribal anyway. Sadly, she gets blindsided right before the jury, and it's a shame because I came really close to liking Lydia a lot, especially in her first confessional, which, let's be real, is her highlight. She really doesn't get enough of the spotlight or the longevity to really elevate her into that great tier, even though she definitely had the potential to. So I'm just gonna settle her in cute. Next up, we have a pretty popular character for some reason, but I don't really get it. We have Tori Meehan. Tori kind of gets comedy heel booking in the beginning. She's like a bumbling villain. Tori starts looking for the idol and immediately becomes a target. Zach tells her that she's a target and she smartly sells him out to Drea, turning the target onto him. She's on the bottom the entire time she's on her tribe, but somehow survives 2 tribal councils to make the merge. While on the bottom, she wins 2 immunities and escapes being a target both those rounds. She gets split into a favorable position her first round vulnerable in the split tribal, where the majority wants to get out Drea. However, due to Rocksroy being eliminated after Chanelle and Drea and Maryanne playing their idols to avoid 3 black players going out in a row, Tori's just kind of left as the only option because there was no way Maryanne and Jonathan were turning on Lindsay. Ironically, where she should be safest, she goes home. It's also ironic she goes home the same night as Rocksroy, who she hated with a passion. I've heard people say that Tori should come back, but I just don't see it. She was disliked by almost everybody on the cast, and she didn't have any real allies. I don't know if she could do any better on a returnee season without significant growth. Regardless, Tori is fun and snarky when she's on, even if she did leave something to be desired as a character, and I didn't find her all that captivating. I know she's really popular, but I can't really see why exactly. I can at least throw her in mildly entertaining. Next up, we have someone who is genuinely one of the boys. We have Zach Wurtenberger. First of all, I need to say, out of all the Survivor alumni to have YouTube channels, Zach Wurtenberger has the best one. It's not Russell Hantz sitting in a hot tub bitching about how much Survivor sucks now. It's Zach and the amazing work he puts into his videos, and the amazing inside knowledge he has. Check him out if you haven't. His channel is way better than mine. He may have the best Survivor videos on YouTube. They're in a league of their own when it comes to Survivor tubers. I just wish he had more than 2 videos. Zach is immediately likable and funny, describing him and Romeo as ripped, and describing finding an alliance as waiting to be kissed. Maryanne has a crush on him, and it's honestly really adorable that they actually tried to date after the season, even if they weren't compatible in the end. Zach is almost like a Jacob Derwin level of starstruck superfan who doesn't understand that the social game is important. After losing that first immunity challenge, Drea proposes to Zach that they should vote out Tori, in which Zach responds to by telling Tori that the rest of the tribe is targeting her. Tori then goes to Drea about it, basically throwing Zach under the bus and making him a target. He tries to get out of it and even plays a shot in the dark, sacrificing his vote for a failed shot at safety, and Zach, interestingly enough, becomes the first ever fully unanimous vote in Survivor history by going out on a 5-0 vote. At least Zach can have that claim to fame, and he even mentions it can go on his Survivor wiki page when he's voted out. On that note, I wish the Survivor wiki was at least half as in-depth as something like the Homestar Runner wiki. It would make these videos a lot easier to collect information for, but I digress. I like the little goofball. He can go into mildly entertaining. And next up at number 8, we have one of the biggest blindsides of the season. We have Giang. In the opening challenge, Hai gets to an advantage with Drea and Lindsay, and to cover up for them taking so long, they're offered mud and fake blood, and Hai wiping the fake blood all over his chest was absolutely ridiculous and so excessive. You could have just done just mud. Why do you need to also be bleeding? He then gets some poor me I'm vegan content in relation to the food situation on Survivor, and I'm sorry if this comes off as insensitive, but I really don't care about any of this or feel much sympathy towards Hai when he's crying about the fact that he might have to eat meat to sustain himself. I just really don't get it, if I'm being honest. I've never had convictions that deep, I guess, where I'm willing to go hungry for any of them. His ride or die is Lydia, and he becomes locked in a 1-1 tie with Daniel over Lydia versus Jenny going home, and he's able to get his way and save Lydia. Sadly, he can't save Lydia the next round when he's screwed over by the hourglass twist, as saving her would just completely tank his standing with the tribe. Hai then becomes the forefront of the strategy, and it seems like he's just sticking his neck out as a threat in order to establish power early, and I think it's the cause of his eventual demise, if you ask me. Lydia becomes the target after the hourglass twist, and now Hai has to scramble to get the numbers to save her. He becomes entangled in the men's alliance even though he really doesn't want to, and Hai's winner edit is slowly fading as it's clear he's probably not going to win, as they keep showing flaws in his relationships with people. He gets a stray vote from Romeo, and he goes full Lex, asking who voted for him and in general being pissed off about receiving a stray vote, which was Romeo's plan all along. Not a great plan, but it was his plan. He then has Mike distrustful of him after getting him to blindside Rocksroy. Hai's mostly pretty game body until he finally gets some personal content when talking about his life as the child of Vietnamese refugees and growing up with nothing, but it's over before this sentence. He's then this total pariah that everybody wants out, and it's a vote that's so easy to organize, and it's a clean blindside where the only one not in on the plan is Romeo. Hai at least seems thrilled to be taken out in this way, exclaiming it's the way he'd want to go out. Hai ends his run as a character that definitely was a strategic head, but through the edit you can tell he was destined to be taken out eventually. Like, you never really got the sense that Hai was winning. Not just that, but he's not the most dynamic character in the world and was game body at times, even if he did have an interesting arc from nice guy to backstabbing villain. I'll put him in fun downfall. And at number 7, we have most likely what is Jeff's favorite player on the season, but we have Jonathan Young. Jonathan immediately establishes himself as a total badass and challenge beast. He's the King Golden Boy Survivor has been looking for 22 years. Jeff keeps pointing out how amazing Jonathan is at the challenges, and I'm surprised Jonathan isn't going, "Hey Jeff, can you not put a giant target on my back, please?" But it doesn't really seem to affect anything anyway, being he lasts all the way to freaking 4th. Jonathan then starts to get really annoyed with Lindsay and Maryanne constantly talking at camp and how overdramatic Maryanne can supposedly get, and they start to have this rivalry of sorts. Jonathan seems like he would be an obvious target at the merge, but instead my expectations were completely subverted when everyone wanted to keep him around as a shield. I don't know how much sense it makes considering the dude had the potential to be an unstoppable god in the immunity challenges, but I'm also not even sure if he had win equity to begin with, even if he got to the end. Nobody seems to really respect him as a player, and Lindsay, his number one ally, even views him as an idiot after he suggests a plan that would just get Maryanne voted out. He gets a victim complex about Drea and Maryanne bringing up race being a factor in Survivor during the split tribal, and Maryanne and Drea have to spell it out for him that they're not accusing anyone of racism, just pointing out subconscious bias, which is not accusing people of being racists. Literally everyone has a subconscious bias one way or the other. It's human nature, and there's nothing wrong with holding each other accountable for it. It's just frustrating because I see these exact conversations play out online all the time, where a person of color will be talking about race and how racism makes them feel, and a white guy will get all overly defensive and think it's about him, and it's just this back and forth where nothing gets accomplished, and here it is on Survivor. It's Aaron Meredith all over again. Just stop, Jonathan. Nobody said you were racist. Sit down. Yeah, he acted like he got it at the end when Tori and Lindsay were voicing their support for Drea and Maryanne, but I don't think he got it. I instead think his caveman brain went, those words make girls mad. Me no say no more. Me confused, so me say nothing. Pretty soon after, though, he wins me back with his monkey run. I'm just a simple man who really likes monkeys and impressions of monkeys. What can I say? He's on board with turning on the Taku 4, and he helps with the blind side of Omar, one of the biggest moves in the game. He fails to win his way to the end, and to even convince Romeo to keep him safe at the end and send Maryanne and Mike to fire, which was in Romeo's best interest. He takes on Mike and fire and is the favorite to win, but Mike pulls out the win and sends Jonathan to the jury. Jonathan wasn't the most captivating character out there, but he was the golden boy for the golden boys, so obviously he goes into golden boy. At number 7, here we have Lindsay Dolashewich. I think that's how you say it. Lindsay is really funny. She's just really blunt and tells it as it is. She doesn't get a ton of content, but what we do get of her is usually fun stuff. She's in an alliance with Jonathan and they just annoy each other. It's great. She thinks he's an idiot and Jonathan thinks she talks too much and doesn't listen to him. She does listen, Jonathan. She just chooses to ignore you. Jonathan tells her about his genius plan to draw out Drea's idol and telling her to put the votes on Maryanne, one of their alliance members. Lindsay, for obvious reasons, is opposed to this idea, and Jonathan doesn't understand that it's a bad idea. Lindsay then uses that as a way to tell people about how much of a moron Jonathan is. Lindsay then decides to go head-to-head with Jonathan during the challenge where the first one out has to play do or die, and she loses. She's full of gloom and doom like she's already lost the game for the rest of the day, and uses this opportunity to give some personal content about being the only woman in a football league for 6 years, showing how much of a badass she is. She's a nervous wreck when she plays the 1-in-3 game of chance and miraculously picks correctly, making it 2 times in a row do or die has failed to eliminate someone on the spot. She then gets blindsided by the Omar vote, and she has some great content where she's arguing with a Jonathan that's just telling her, "You voted for me," over and over again. She finds the advantage on the big toe, but it doesn't amount to anything since she ends up losing to Mike in the challenge by 1 puzzle piece. She doesn't give up, and she fights to try to either convince Mike to give her his idol, best case scenario, or alternatively, having Mike give his idol to Maryanne and putting Romeo, Lindsay, and Maryanne's votes onto Jonathan. None of those happen. Maryanne does get the idol, but everyone else votes for Lindsay since everyone knows she has the bonds on the jury to win the game. I would say it sucks to go out this way, but it was fully out of respect for how Lindsay played the game. She's not the most dynamic character in the world, but she's respectable and rootable enough, and I could see someone putting her higher than where I put her, but I'm going to put her in mildly entertaining. And now, reaching the top 5, and I can't believe this guy is in the top 5, but here we have Daniel Strunk. Daniel is fucking awesome. He pulls a Stephanie LaGrossa and dislocates his shoulder in the first challenge and gets this big sympathy edit where he talks about having leukemia when he was a kid. He's one of the few survivors you can call a survivor, and I'm really glad he could become a healthy adult. He's in the center of a lot of the strategy on his original tribe until making an absolutely egregious move at Tribal Council, where upon being locked in a 1-1 tie with High, Daniel opens the discussion up with, "I don't want to go to Rocks," immediately surrendering all leverage to High, and then throwing his number 1 ally Chanelle under the bus for no real reason. If he didn't want to go to Rocks that bad and couldn't convince High to turn on Lydia, he could have just voted out Jenny anyway and could have been like, "Hey guys, sorry I voted out Jenny, I had no choice." And I don't think anyone would have held it too much against him other than maybe Lydia, and he could have saved his relationship with Chanelle instead of just immediately folding the High side of things for no reason. Chanelle then reveals Daniel told her about Mike's idol, causing Mike to turn against Daniel. Things are not looking good for Daniel if they go to Tribal Council again. He makes things even worse for himself by going out spearfishing after sitting out challenges because of his dislocated shoulder. Not catching any fish was just the icing on top. Daniel's toast. You can see it a mile away. Not understanding obvious social cues, Daniel volunteers to sit out again. At Tribal, he tries to convince his tribe to vote out Chanelle, but instead he gets voted out by his tribe. Daniel is a fun, chaotic character. I would love to see the dude back. He makes that Vati tribe so much fun, and I think he belongs in Hilarious. And now we have an absolutely excellent top four, and starting it off, we actually have Omar Zaheer. Omar is the front runner for most of the season, and the one I expected to win in the end. He just seems like a really gentle and kind man. He gets some personal content about him being a practicing Muslim, the stigma that goes into that, and how he needs to explain to his tribe that he's going to go pray and that he's not looking for an idol. He might be the first Muslim since Ibrahim all the way back in Palau to be on the show, now that I think about it. He's quiet in the pre-merge, but it's all strategy. He knows to keep his mouth shut. He knows to let the bigger personalities in Maryanne, Jonathan, and Lindsay take over. But once he's a free man, we start getting a lot more strategical content from him. He gets tipped off by Hai not to trust Chanelle, and he's hurt that Chanelle didn't even tell him he wouldn't have a vote in the next tribal because of the ship wheel decision, and it gets the ball rolling on Chanelle's downfall. Mike then starts to get weary of Hai, and Omar, even though he wanted Rocks out, uses that as an opportunity to turn Mike against Hai so Omar can replace him in the pecking order. He lies to Mike and tells him that Hai told him that Mike is Hai's puppet who will do anything for him, and Mike buys this hook, line, and sinker. Remember when Kenny got Sugar to turn on Ace by telling her the same thing? Yeah, Omar pulled off a Gabon move. I'm so proud of him. Omar then uses his knowledge of Drea's knowledge as power advantage against her when he convinces Mike to give him his idol, leaving nothing for Drea to take, earning Mike's complete trust. He plays Mike like a fiddle, honestly. It's pretty fantastic. He's kind of an evil genius, or so he thinks. What he doesn't know is that all these great moves he's doing with Mike is making Mike realize he needs to get Omar the fuck out of here. He gets targeted for the best blindside of the season. He got Survivor confident and paid the Survivor price for it. Omar was such a joy and a really respectable figure, and I wouldn't blame you if he was your favorite on the season. Omar for sure goes into entertaining. Next up, we have someone who I'm surprised is at number 3 because I really didn't remember much of this character before the rewatch, but on analysis, she's great, and we have Drea Wheeler. Drea being legally blind in one eye makes her badassery so much more badass. Drea is pretty subdued in the pre-merge, but quietly collects advantages and is pretty locked and loaded come the merge. Drea must be crazy because she immediately knows exactly what's up with the Hourglass advantage just based on Jeff asking if they're sure if they want to send Rocksroy to exile. It's really impressive how quickly she picked up on that. Drea's just really stoic and cool, and tries to play as optimally as she possibly can, and she's good at it. She's especially amazing at finding advantages and keeping her cool about it. She finds a clue that tells her an advantage where she needs to quickly get an idol out of a hole filled with wet paint and wash the paint off of her arm before she gets caught red-handed. Ha, good job, Survivor, you made a funny. Now, not only does she have an extra vote, an amulet, and an idol, but now she has knowledge as power. Drea is pretty much seeming like she's being set up for a winner's edit here, and she's one of the front runners along with Omar, Hai, and Mike. She gets put in a bad position in the split tribal where it's looking like Drea and Maryanne are the targets along with Jonathan wanting to flush her idol, and she just has this look like she just saw a ghost as soon as she sees Rocksroy on the jury, and you can see the wheels turning in her head like, hold up, Chanelle and Rocksroy are on the jury, me and Maryanne are on the bottom. Something's not right here. You can tell she's avoiding stating the obvious in front of all these white people at first. When Jeff asked Drea why she looks so shocked at Rocksroy's elimination, her answer is, I don't know, which I took as, I don't know an answer to that question without looking like I'm accusing you all of racism. Like I said, she immediately picks up on things that most don't see. It's pretty impressive. She's being asked questions and she looks really uncomfortable, like she knows she's in a horror movie and she sees the writing on the wall. After skating around the issues, she finally decides, fuck it, it needs to be said. It points out the fact that whenever black people make the merge, they tend to get booted right away. And when I first watched this season, I thought it was a bit hyperbolic and that she may have been saying it as a game move. But upon doing this entire series and analyzing the boot order with what she said in mind, she has a point. It's eerie how common it is for black players to go out as soon as the merge hits, and while it doesn't happen every time, it happens enough where it's weird. And that's even if there are any black players making the merge to begin with. I can understand noticing it enough to point it out. Jonathan gets really defensive, and you can see Drea getting frustrated because I feel like this is exactly why she was so hesitant to bring it up in the first place. It's hard to talk about, especially as a black woman, because there's always that stigma of the angry black woman that I see see a lot of black women actively trying to avoid coming off as when talking about race. I am fully sympathetic to Drea in this scene. Even though I am nowhere near in her shoes, I can see exactly where she's coming from and how much it must feel like walking on eggshells. Drea and Maryanne play their idols to prove to the audience that they're not bringing up race as a game move, and it sucks that they have to do that. Tori goes home, and Drea's game is pretty much dead in the water at this point. She gets to survive another round just because everyone wants high out, but the following round, Lindsay is safe from the do or die twist. Drea's pretty much screwed. No matter how much she's trying to get Mike out instead of her, she's the one going out in this tribal. She has this great speech about how she observes every single moment happening around her, and I believe her from what I've seen, and she's just further revealing herself to be a really aware player in the game. She still has 3 advantages up her sleeve and uses her knowledge as power to target Mike's idol, in which it is revealed in a crazy twist that Omar actually revealed to Mike that Drea had the advantage 30 minutes before tribal and convinced Mike to give him the idol, making Drea look like a fool in the same way Liana did last season. That's why you don't tell people about advantages. When will players learn? But Mike didn't have a fake to give her, unlike Xander. Drea has a fun exit where she airs everyone's secrets and makes a big song and dance about her torch being snuffed out, but in a fun way. Drea gets voted out with 2 advantages in her pocket, and it's such a fun way to go for such a great character. Drea is for sure going into entertaining. And now we are getting to the obvious top 2. Number 2 is also the obvious number 2. It is Mike Turner. Mike gets this hero edit in the first episode where he gets to talk about his career as a retired firefighter and being the first Puerto Rican fire chief in Hoboken. He finds this silly catchphrase advantage first and now needs to pretend to be the biggest FIFA fan and say that the grace of soccer makes him cry. I kinda love this advantage. He's convinced by Daniel not to say his phrase, but Mike does it anyway when he hears Maryanne and Drea say the other 2 phrases. In fact, he says it about 3 times. He can't shut up about how much he loves soccer. He then hilariously forgets where he buried his idol and needs to have Daniel help him find it. Daniel then wants to read the fine print of the idol and loses it again, and it's hilarious. Mike doesn't have his vote at his first tribal council, and he isn't able to save his number 1 ally in Jenny. Mike is completely fine though. He's able to integrate himself in any conversation with any group because he's such a good dude who everyone likes having around. He gives the first impression of this big old school Jersey meathead, but the dude has a heart of gold. He knew nothing about Islam, so he asks Omar about it, and they form this really cute bond based on Mike's open-mindedness and curiosity about other cultures, and Omar's willingness to share his passion for his religion with somebody. It's just nice to see an old dog still willing to learn new tricks. It's honestly rare. He then feels a type of way about having the blindside Rocksroy, so he confides in Omar that he doesn't feel good about it, which leads to High's downfall. He gets convinced to turn on High by Omar, and also gives him his idol, saving it from Drea's knowledge as power. It's a plan so amazing it makes Mike realize he needs to cut Omar. He works out a plan with Maryanne, convincing Maryanne to make the tough decision to betray Omar. Mike then gets cold feet about the plan, thinking Lindsay might play her idol on him, but is convinced by Maryanne to just go with the plan. He has this hero moment where he wins his first immunity despite being 30 years older than his competition and Lindsay having an advantage. He cries about how proud his kids are going to be of him and that he's been waiting for this moment for 21 years when he first watched Survivor Season 1 in the firehouse. He takes on Jonathan in firemaking and beats him, earning himself a chance in the final 3, and he's looking like the one with the best shot at winning. However, his problem is he doesn't own his game. He harps on honesty and honor, doesn't own up to the fact that he was kind of a snake, and doesn't really provide a good argument of why they should vote for him to win the title of Sole Survivor. Mike is still an amazing character. He's a standout on this cast, and I would not be surprised if he played again. Mike is going into love. And now, the number 1 that we all saw coming, we have Maryanne Oketch. That first episode hits differently knowing Maryanne had a UTI before the season and pissed herself right as she got to the island. Poor girl.
You know what? I pissed myself, but guess what? I'm about to dance this shit dry.
I would be like, can I just get a redo of the entire game, like, already? Maryanne is immediately a joy. Jeff points out that she doesn't stop smiling on the first day. Day 2, she has the most ridiculous cry in Survivor history when Jackson is pulled from the game and she is just openly weeping and wailing like a loved one just died in front of her or something.
Mama!
Maryanne is like a little kid. She's so excited about every little thing and has so much energy which rubs some people the wrong way. But they could go screw. Maryanne is just Maryanne. It's so cute how she doesn't swear, only saying fudge and shiz. If you ask me, Maryanne is extremely lucky she wasn't booted in the pre-merge, considering how much her bubbly attitude and boisterous personality seemed to annoy the rest of her tribe, especially Jonathan. The ironic part is Jonathan kept her away from tribal most of the time. Coming into the merge, you would not expect that Maryanne is being set up for a winner's edit because she is on the bottom, looked at as weird, and she's reduced to tears wondering if there's something wrong with her and why she can't become accepted for who she is by these people. However, in that scene is where I felt most connected to her. I feel you, girl. It's tough being the weird kid, but you gotta remember, no, you're the normal one. It's everyone else who's weird. Anyone with me on that the normies are the weird ones? Maryanne starts utilizing a strategy that I would be using if I played Survivor, making people feel bad for you. Nobody likes voting people out, so why not play on that and make them feel really bad about voting you out? She gets some really good personal content when she needs to defend Drea speaking out against racial biases in Survivor, and has this really good speech about how the 1 in 18 chance everyone has to win Survivor can be bigger or smaller depending on the person and/or their background, and that privilege within Survivor exists, which is absolutely true. All this just makes me respect what Sean Rector did that much more, if you ask me. Maryanne then immediately finds another idol that Lindsay completely missed and decides that this is the idol she's not going to tell anyone about. She then has this weird scene where she's talking about her toenails falling off a couple times a year as the rest of her tribe is horrified and telling her that that's not normal. I have this whole thing about fingernails and toenails, and if my toenail ever fell off, I think I would just cry. Maryanne just lets her freak flag fly, and that's why she's a queen. She then gets Romeo on board and convinces Mike to go forth with a plan to blindside Omar using her extra vote, and it's her best move of the game. She still has her idol at Final 5, but Mike uses his idol on her so she didn't have to use it, letting her keep the idol as a souvenir. She thankfully doesn't have to compete in firemaking and convince Romeo to save her, giving her safety going into the Final 3. She does a great job articulating her game at Final Tribal Council and showing that she still had her idol that she called the only kept secret in this game. It's what sealed her win in my eyes. It showed that after her move to vote out Omar that she was the only one who was guaranteed to go into the Final 3 no matter what happened. Everyone was taking her and she beats everyone. It's a great endgame and it's what elevates her into being a good winner despite being on the bottom most of the time and never truly dominating. Maryanne showed that you can be a weirdo and still win Survivor. We had Fabio as a goofball winner, but Maryanne was the first goofball winner that was respectable. She's probably the most iconic winner of the new era. Maryanne is fantastic. She's a shoo-in for a returnee season. I adore Maryanne, and as much as I would like to see a Mike win, I'm so glad Maryanne won. She's somebody kids can look up to. She's not afraid to be herself, and she wins. There's few journeys better than hers in the game. She shows you don't have to be totally fake to win Survivor. She's a treasure. She's going into favorite. This may come as a shocker, but I actually did not like 42 as much as I liked 41. I know, it's crazy. I think 41 overall had a stronger cast, and while I don't dislike the cast of 42, I feel like it wasn't nearly as memorable outside of a few names like Maryanne, Mike, Drea, Omar, and Jonathan, and overall I feel like the season didn't captivate me as much. Maryanne is an absolutely fantastic winner, one of the best in the series, and while I don't think she played the best game in the world outside of her endgame, as a character she's fucking amazing and she elevates this season. It's not bad by any means, but it will most likely be a middle season in my rankings. But next up on the rankings, we actually have the first season I ever watched live. We have Survivor 43, and yes, if you didn't know, I am a fairly new Survivor fan. 43 was coming out just as I finished binge watching the entire series for the first time, and it's been my life ever since. And I am so happy to be coming full circle. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, you are amazing, and I hope to see you in Survivor 43. Goodbye.